When I was 29 years old, I met my now husband. It was an unexpected encounter. We were attracted to each other, gradually developed a deep relationship, and eventually came together. After we got married, we didn't plan to have children. We wanted to be able to focus on our careers and our common interests. We believed we could lead a full and happy life. However, when I was 33 years old, I became pregnant. This unexpected news sent us into deep thought. We realized that this was a precious life and we had a responsibility to care for and love it. We made a joint decision to keep this child. We believed that this child would give us more love and meaning. We began to prepare for the new life that was to come. Shortly after my child was born, I had a terrible dream. I dreamed that I had been in a terrible car accident that resulted in the loss of my life. This dream made me feel very scared and upset. For the next few months, whenever I drove, images of this dream would come to my mind. I told myself that it was just a dream and that I should not see it as some kind of omen. I became very cautious and sensitive to every detail of my driving. Every time I overtook a car or faced a complicated traffic situation, I felt a wave of unease and fear. 3 months later, the accident happened. That day, I was about to pick up my son from my mother's house. After I got off the highway, I was about to make a left turn at the next intersection. As I approached the intersection, I noticed that the traffic light was turning red and I sped up. Just then, a truck came directly at me. Time seemed to slow down and I heard an ear-splitting crash. The large truck slammed into my minivan. The car began to shake violently, and my body swayed uncontrollably from side to side. The violent impact made me feel dizzy. Shards of glass and metal floated in the air. At this time, the airbag suddenly popped out. The strong impact made my consciousness start to become blurred. I tried to open my eyes, but the world around me seemed to become distorted and blurred. It was like my eyes were covered with a fog. I could feel my breathing become rapid and difficult, as if a huge stone was pressing on my chest, making it impossible for me to breathe. After a while, I appeared in a darkness. I was floating in the darkness of space, where there was no concept of time. Everything seemed to have disappeared, leaving only silence. In this darkness, I did not feel fear. I could feel a faint warmth. A huge hand suddenly appeared in the darkness. I followed the hand's guidance and moved quickly through the darkness. As I was moving, I saw some blurred images. I saw my family and friends, all of whom were praying silently. I saw my son's smile and the love in his eyes. As I moved, I felt a gradual growth of inner strength. Finally, I came to a beautiful place. A magnificent building appeared in front of me. The building seemed to be floating in the air. Curiously, I walked toward the building. It was like a fantastic temple, emitting a dazzling light. I entered the building, and the air around me was filled with a calm and peaceful atmosphere. The interior of the building looked very complicated. I walked along the passageway, which was lined with beautiful frescoes and sculptures. Suddenly, someone called my name. I turned my head and there was my grandfather standing behind me. He was accompanied by a guide, whose eyes revealed wisdom. My grandfather whispered, "Son, you have been in a serious car accident, and you can now choose to stay here. This is your true home." I looked down and I saw the scene of the car accident. I saw that my minivan was very badly damaged. Rescuers were busily working. I saw myself stuck in the car with blood all over my clothes. The wizard told me that this place was full of love and happiness and that there were no troubles here. I didn't give my answer right away. They led me to the top of the building, and I saw a huge throne. On the throne sat a tall man of great stature. However, his face was covered by a mysterious layer of light, so that I could not see his face clearly. But I could still feel the wisdom and power emanating from him. Below the throne, I found many other people in different costumes, who seemed to come from different times. They were kneeling on the ground, gazing reverently at the mysterious figure sitting on the throne. Although I could not identify the mysterious figure, I sensed that his presence had a special meaning for each person. He may be a symbol of wisdom, or perhaps the ruler of this mysterious world. In any case, his presence gave people strength and faith, so that they could find belonging and hope. I felt a special connection with this mysterious figure. I realized that in this beautiful and serene place, I could find the answers to my inner self and gain strength and guidance. I continued to walk toward the throne. As I stood in front of him, he reached out a hand and gently touched my forehead. A warm energy passed into me, and my thoughts gradually cleared. He did not speak, but we could communicate through our consciousness. In this beautiful place, time seemed to lose its meaning. We discussed my life and my work. We also talked about the secrets of the soul. However, these precious memories were later erased as if they belonged only to that particular place. I realized that, as humans, we may not be able to fully understand these secrets, because they are beyond our limited perception. Perhaps it is this uncertainty of not being able to fully understand that will allow us to grow better on Earth. In the end, he told me that I could choose to return to the real world and continue my life's journey, or I could stay in this place. Whichever decision I made, he would respect and accept my choice. I was struggling internally. I stared at the mysterious man, not knowing how to make a choice. At that moment, I thought of my son. If I stayed, what should I do with my son? He was only 6 months old. His father didn't even know how to take care of him. My grandfather reassured me that your son and family would be fine. Time will heal the hurt and your mother will come out of her grief and find the courage to live again. Your husband will also grow out of his grief and learn to care for your son. He went on to explain that death is an inevitable event in life, and it is a lesson we must face and learn. Your loss is also a necessary lesson for those around you. Thoughts of my son make my heart heavy again. I could not bear the thought of him growing up without his mother. Next, I saw my son's future life. When he was about 10 years old, he had a new mother. She was a very kind woman who was very good to my husband and son. I felt a twinge of relief to see how close they were to each other. But she wanted to have another child with her husband. This was not acceptable to me, and I knew that she could not love her children equally. This was not the outcome I wanted. I longed to return to my son and witness his growth and progress. I could not give up my human life, I could not give up my love for my son. I made up my mind that I would return to his side. Eventually, I expressed my decision to the mystic. I told him that I longed to return to my son and that he needed my care and love. The mystic replied gently, "Your decision is wise. Your child needs your guidance and support. But remember, when he grows up, you will have the opportunity to return here again. I know that whether I choose to return to Earth or stay here, love and care will always be with me. I am confident that in due time I will come back to this peaceful place again." The process of returning to Earth was amazing. I began to feel the rhythm of my breath and the warmth of my body. I began to feel the subtle movement of my muscles, and my fingers began to twitch subtly. My eyes opened again, adjusting to the change in light. I could hear the sounds around me. The process was not painful. The moment I returned to my body, I felt a new sense of strength and courage. I found myself lying on a soft bed, covered by a white quilt. I was back in the hospital room. The doctor approached me with a relieved smile on his face. My husband stood by the bed with concern and love in his eyes. He held my hand tightly and said in a gentle voice, "Honey, you're finally awake." I smiled and nodded my head. After I recovered, I left the hospital. When I pushed open the door of my home, I saw my son lying on the bed, playing with his favorite toy. He looked up at me with a smile. I reached out my hands and gently picked him up. I laughed happily. My son smiled back. His smile was so innocent, as if to tell me he could feel my love. Whenever I saw my son smile, I knew I had made the right choice. For a year after the accident, I endured severe pain. 2 years later, the pain still had not left me. This made me become extremely depressed. I began to wonder if I would ever be able to return to normal again. The doctors told me that the pain was more present than they had expected. This news was a disappointment to me. I felt trapped in a rut from which I could not escape, as if I would never be free from the pain. I had fantasized about returning to that loving place, free from the pain and suffering on earth. I felt like that was where I belonged, a place free of pain and disease. However, I knew that my son was the only reason for me to continue living. Although my heart would often yearn to return to that place, I accepted the fact that I was back on earth. I readjusted my mindset and I decided to stop letting pain rule my life. I decided to find the meaning of life.